Hey, good afternoon, everybody. How you doing today?
Good.
We got you after lunch. We got you in a good way. We've been building things for a few years now with you, and it's quite exciting. I'm pleased to be here. My dad was a steel worker, and every time he saw how many jobs I had, he'd look at me and said, "Son, can't you hold a job?" So I always told him, I said, "Dad, it's only because you had a good paying job that I was able to go to school and be able to have jobs like that." So Bruce Power is all about building, and we're building careers for people in the trades. We're building careers for people in our industry, in our communities, and we're rebuilding our communities in rural Ontario, and you are all a very big part of that, and I want to say thank you. What you may not realize is that during the pandemic, we kept working at our site. And it was only because we all were working together and collaborating that we were able to continue on doing the things that we were doing day in and day out. We had no COVID outbreaks on our site. And what makes that remarkable is that during peak shifts on daylight, we had upward of 4,500 people on daylight shift during the heart of the pandemic. And in a given week, we had upwards of 12,000 unique individuals coming in and out of our site each week. So my compliments to all of you, your teammates, your members, for that work. We would not have been able to do the things that we do at Bruce Power without that, and we've been able to continue advancing not only our life extension program, but as I said, rebuilding local communities, really reaching out and helping people day in and day out, especially throughout the pandemic. So as I get started here, I understand my slides are going to be up. So Bruce Power, we're the largest operating nuclear site in the world with 8 reactors. We started our efforts at around 6,300 megawatts, and we continue to increase the power for Ontario. So we supply 30% of the electricity for Ontario at 30% less than the average residential cost. So we are a low-cost producer. But also one of the things that is not commonly known about our nuclear industry is that we make medical isotopes. We are a world superpower in the production of medical isotopes. We make cobalt-60 that's been used to sterilize about 40% of the once-use medical devices around the world. So during the pandemic, the harvests that we did in our outages were used to sterilize upwards of 24 billion pairs of surgical gloves, swabs, gowns, anything that comes in a plastic bag that you see in the dentist's office or the doctor's office, chances are is getting sterilized by an isotope we make in Tiverton, Ontario, a town of 2,000 people. We're very proud of that. We also make cancer treatments. We make brain tumor treatments, and more importantly, we've recently installed a new production system in our Unit 7 reactor that's going to revolutionize the medical approach to cancer treatments. Why? Because we'll be able to make isotopes at a scale that has not been seen before for treatments. That means they'll be affordable, they'll be available, and that the medical community now can feel confident that they can invest in the research of these treatments simply because we'll be able to make them and make them available. Our first isotope that we're going to make is lutetium-177, which is a prostate cancer treatment. But that isotope is also so impactful against cancer, it's being used in a new form of cancer treatment called theranostics, where it's a diagnostic and treatment at the same time. And this is being done in Toronto through the University Health Network by Dr. Rebecca Wong. This could really start early treatment of many forms of cancer. So there is hope on the way, and as we get this production system up and running on our first reactor, we'll take it into the future on many other reactors. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're here to talk about Canada's largest private sector infrastructure project, and that's what we're working on. In 2016, we announced that we would embark on a journey to renew 6 of our reactors at the site, complete refurbishments. And this project would stem from 2016 and run its course through about 2033 with an investment of over $13 billion in the assets. So far, to date, we've invested about $2.5 billion, and all that work's been done in accordance with the plan, on schedule, and on budget. So we're 6 years into it, and we still have quite a ways to go before we're finished. And what this is setting the stage for, by OPG doing their refurbishment and Bruce Power doing our life extension program and doing this work well and on time and on budget, it's setting the stage for the next generation of nuclear here in Canada. And you'll hear some talk about it in a panel this afternoon. I believe you have a panel, or tomorrow, on small modular reactors. One thing about our contract, though, with the ISO is we're having to improve our performance throughout its duration. In other words, it's not good enough just to do it for the amount of money that we spent on the very first major component replacement on Unit 6, which is underway now, and that unit will start up next year. Each successive one has to get less expensive and be done in a shorter period of time. So we have to reduce 20% in cost and 15% in schedule going to Unit 3, which is the next unit. And then for Unit 4, we have to reduce another 20% in cost and 15% in schedule. And then 4, 5, 7, and 8 will all be done for that amount of money. So it requires us to innovate. It requires us to be able to do things more effectively and efficiently. And to do that, we're employing supply companies and innovation throughout the province of Ontario and throughout Canada. You see, we are a made-in-Canada solution. 95% of all the investment that we make in our facilities stays in Ontario, and 98% of it stays in Canada. Why? Because we have a supply chain that is capable of making the tooling, making the parts for our CANDU reactors. The CANDU is a Canadian technology that was evolved in the 1960s, and with the modernization that we're putting into it, it'll allow us to operate all the way out to 2064. These will be long-term jobs, not only in construction, but in our outages. We do outages about every 2 years to 3 years on each reactor, so it's a long-term supply of work as we continue to invest in the technology and innovations to improve the efficiencies. Our plants are actually running better now than they ever have in the history of the company, and they're 35 years old. When they're renewed, we expect that performance to improve even beyond that. Think about that. Assets that can run all the way out to 2064, solid, good-paying jobs that can be counted on year in and year out, is something you can build a community around. And with that, we've been able to start developing an economic development platform that has reached out and into rural Ontario. In Grey Bruce and Huron counties, after the 2008 recession, times were pretty hard as most light manufacturing facilities closed. Many towns, you couldn't sell a house in the town. There were some very difficult times. That's now changed in our area. Now there are houses being built, vacant storefronts are now occupied, the light manufacturing facilities that were closed are now in use, and we're making components right here in Canada, right here in Ontario, for use in our facilities. We've seen life come back to the towns, to the small towns, and that growth is encouraging. You're all a big part of that. The work you do day in and day out in our refurbishments is top-notch quality. It has to be, right? We're a nuclear facility. We have to do the best of the best. Why? Because there's people counting on you each and every day for 30% of their electricity. They're counting on you for life-saving medical isotopes. And when we refurbish these units, that will even get more broad throughout the world. So to do this right, to do this well, requires a lot of training, a lot of preparation, and it requires the skill of a professional tradesperson to be able to implement the work and do it properly. You can see in the training center, our teams are using advanced tooling. You can see the type of work, the intricacy and the detail in the feeder tube replacements. That's all brand new tube done by the Boilermakers and the pipe fitters. It looks like artwork. Our Unit 3 will start next in February of 2023. And with that, we'll be in the same time starting up Unit 6 from its completion. We'll be taking Unit 3 out of service for its refurbishment. And then soon after that, we'll be moving into Unit 4 at about the end of 2024, beginning of 25. And that'll let us use one of the largest cranes in the world to install the steam generators, both in Unit 3 and then to turn around and reach over and put the steam generators in Unit 4. It's big, heavy construction, and at the same time, it's very detailed and intricate precision within the reactor to put components back in a very orderly manner and very precise manner. Our forecast is quite large over the coming years. You can see out through 26, and you could just take this all the way out to 2030. Our demand is going to peak somewhere around 3,500 trades, but also it'll be pretty steady with about 3,000 throughout this whole period in time. It's a good, solid level of work to have. It's a good, solid income. When you look at your future, it provides that security. It's not up and down, it's consistent, and it's stable. So our life extension program will be able to not only affect your members and their well-being, but the well-being of the communities and the hundreds of sub-suppliers and companies throughout Ontario and Canada that are making parts for us. Many of them have your members working in their facilities, and other unions like the United Steelworkers. What this looks like on a trades perspective, you can see the types of tradespeople that we'll need during the whole process. We do use apprentices. We need to bring the young people in and teach them what to do so that they can carry on the work that previous generations taught to this generation, and then you can pass it forward. And we're very much in support of training colleges and having apprentices on our job sites so they can learn not only the trade, but our industry. Because we think as a clean energy transition goes forward, nuclear is part of that solution. Ontario's already deeply decarbonized. It's decarbonized because 60% of the electricity comes from nuclear, 25% from hydro, about 8% from renewables, wind and solar. The rest is from gas and biomass. You compare us to Germany. Deep decarbonization is believed to be below 50 grams equivalent of CO2 per kilowatt hour. When you compare that around the world, Germany's about 400 plus grams of CO2 equivalent per kilowatt hour. California's about 150 grams equivalent. And here in Ontario, we're at about 35 grams equivalent. We are deeply decarbonized. The price of electricity in Germany is about 45 cents. California is about 30 cents on average. And in Ontario, we're about 13.5 cents. So we're already deeply decarbonized at 13.5 cents, where others have to spend much more money, and their rates are only going one way, and that's up. And we've been working with the Ontario provincial government and the ISO for our companies and our citizens to be able to get credit for doing that. And we're working to create a clean energy credit program that will advantage our manufacturing base here in Ontario in the world marketplace, which means it will be attractive for economic development for other companies to come in and build new facilities. We're also increasing the power of our plants. As I said, we started off at about 6,300 megawatts in 2016. We're now rated around 6,550 megawatts, and we announced a project 2030 that will take us over 7,000 megawatts by 2030. We'll add effectively another reactor to our site by just increasing the reactor, by increasing the power of the 8 reactors that we have. And last but not least is our contribution to the medical community. How many folks know somebody that has had cancer? And I think this is something we take great pride in. You know, we don't make a lot of money in medical isotopes, but we're not doing it for the money, right? We're doing this because we can and because we should, because it's the right thing to do. We're going to have an impact on people all around the world with the medical isotopes we make, and you all are going to be a big part of that by renewing our plants and being able to move them back into production all the way out to 2064. This will be a stable supply of medical treatments that previously aren't really available to everyone, right? They're in very small quantities, and it's only because they're typically made in research reactors or cyclotrons, but just don't have the capacity that we have. We can make isotopes on a scale, as I said, cobalt-60, we sterilize 40% of the once-used medical devices around the world. With this new production system, we can make cancer treatments at that same scale now. I want to thank you for all the hard work that you've put in over the last 2 years. I always tell folks it's kind of been like dog years, I think. For every year last year, I think I've aged 3 years. But we made it, right? Or I should say we're making it. It's still not over yet. But we made it through. We kept working. We kept people employed. We kept people healthy and safe. And we're continuing on our way. And I just want to say thank you for all of that. Appreciate it.